And so he was kind of on the rise, and Tooth and Nail was on the rise, and I just kind of showed up and jumped on kind of unknowingly because I was not like a Tooth and Nail rock kid. I liked rock, but I wasn't really like deeply into all this stuff. I just really like lucked out with the timing, to be honest.
Welcome to Church Jams Now, the podcast where three former youth group kids and current music nerds deep dive into Christian music from the 90s and 2000s. I, of course, am your co-host, Kylan Savage. With me, as always, is Mr. TJ Smith.
Hey, man. How you doing today?
You know, I'm going to make it. How about yourself?
I feel like I'm all right. I just feel like sometimes we jump into things, and I wanted to take this opportunity to ask you how you are.
I really appreciate that. We also have beautiful producer Josh Olson.
Hey guys, I'm finding myself in somewhat of a summer of darkness, but I'm happy to be here with y'all. If I can see you,
okay.
Can I?
Are you feeling?
You guys are there, yeah.
Are you feeling terminal?
Just a tad.
Oh no, I hope not.
just a tad terminal. That's really funny, gentlemen. We are also joined this evening by Mr. Zach Hodges.
Hello.
I'll add crowd sound effects in post.
Awesome.
But it'll be like
Great
we'll do
fanfare.
like a con standing ovation. It'll be like 7 minutes long.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be more than I ever got in my life.
Yeah. Well, we go all out here at Church Jams Now, so nothing
Right.
but the best.
Star treatment.
Nice.
Zach, how are you this evening?
I am doing well. I'm in Southern California. It's like a little bit light outside still, but it's winding down, and been a nice day. It's been a good week, so I'm feeling good, and I'm delighted to talk to you all about very short but formative time of my life.
Yeah. I'm so excited too. Before we get into that, I'm gonna tease it a little bit. We're gonna get into some more fun stuff later on. We always like to start our guests. We like to hear their origin stories. What I mean by that, so the three of us were all musicians. And we were basically told our whole lives we could only listen to Christian music in the 90s and 2000s. And so I want to know from you, like what music did you listen to growing up? What was the first CD you got? And then how ostensibly did you get into quote unquote Christian music in the 90s and 2000s?
Oh man. Well, it sounds like I'm in good company. I mean, I was one of those kids too. I think the very first, this is going to date myself. The first thing I can remember getting, I think my mom got me like a DC Talk tape. And this would have been like,
Nice.
even before Free at Last, like whatever the one, I think New
wow.
Thing.
New Thing?
It'd been new thing.
Yeah.
I must have been like third or
Nice.
fourth grade. But then
Oh,
I remember
wow.
the first one that I like picked that I wanted. I got a CD player in fourth grade. It was a big deal with Discman. And I asked my grandma for Sixpence None the Richer.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
It was like, they had like a red one. It was called This Beautiful Mess.
Yeah.
And it was so good. I loved it. And actually, like that CD now I realize really shaped me a lot. I didn't realize it at the time. Later on, I listened to the Sundays and I was like, oh man, they ripped off Sixpence so bad. And then I did the dates and realized all of that. But I mean, I've gotten like way into like shoegaze and New Bloody Valentine and all this stuff. And I'm realizing like that album was kind of the origin of all that.
Nice.
Nice.
Then, similar to all of you, probably couldn't mostly listen to Christian music. I think my first concert was like Audio Adrenaline and DC Talk, which was pretty cool.
Cool.
My kids we just went to Forest Frank, and it gave me
yeah.
those vibes. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm glad they can have this kind of experience. And yeah, I was a total youth group kid too. I grew up always like playing piano. My mom's a teacher. I think she thought doing music would be good for math or something. And so she got me doing.
There's counting involved.
Yeah, there is. And I think there's
She was right.
developmental connections or something.
Yeah.
It's a thing. And so she got me doing piano, and I didn't really like it. I was probably 4 or 5 when I started. Around like 10 or 11, I was finally like, I think I'm over this. And they were my parents were just like, okay, let's just give it like one more push. The teacher's going to have you kind of try this other thing, and maybe we'll kill it after that. And that other thing was starting to learn chords, play like basic worship songs. But, instead of like playing the music on the staff, learning to improvise, learning chords and all that stuff, that just like really opened it up for me. I'd always been a creative kid. I wanted to be like animator for Disney or something with drawing or something. But once I started playing songs with chords where I could just kind of do whatever I wanted, and I learned how to do that, I just totally fell in love, and I became a total music kid in junior high. And I kind of just, piano turned into keyboard, which in the late 90s and early 2000s was like really not cool. This was like kind of grunge era. So like the most you would be as the keyboard player was like maybe organ and Wurlitzer a little bit.
Right.
But there was like no synths. It was just like not cool to be keyboard. So I wrestled with that for a long time and also dabbled in guitar in junior high. And then anyways, around high school, my dad actually had like a really big, like Stevie Ray Vaughan played on the radio, and just he got into this still lifelong blues phase. And I was sort of sucked into that too as a musician as well. And that just Christian music too. And then, and I was really into like ska, everybody I think loved like Five Iron Frenzy and what was the other one? Supertones. Loved all that in junior high. But high school started to kind of branch out. I had some music friends, and one of them got me into like Radiohead. And that I loved that. Coldplay obviously happened around that time. Like Parachutes was awesome. And it's wild. My kids love Coldplay, and they're still going. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And worship music was kind of coming up during that time too. And I was really just playing at my church. I grew up in the Bay Area in like a suburb town. And I was just playing keys at my church, and I was playing around with recording software. I got like my own Pro Tools rig in my room, and I was recording songs and in a little band in high school. And I really wanted to do it, but I just didn't really know how that would happen. And a woman named Sherry Youngward, who was an artist on 5 Minute Walk, that was a label up in the Bay Area. Yeah. She moved from Seattle to the Bay Area, and she started going to the church that I was at. And she asked a friend of hers, hey, I need to kind of put together a band, like maybe a guitar player and a keyboard player. Do you know anybody? And I was the person they recommended as keyboard player because, they're so rare. Nobody wants to do that, especially back then. And so she and I became friends. And I mean, I was 15, I think, at this point. And I was good enough, I think. And it's started playing like little shows with her and stuff. And throughout all of high school and beyond, we'd kind of travel around playing with her. And so that was like, she really kind of opened me from like Radiohead / like Dave Matthews high schooler that I was, starting to see some other interesting music and more like electronic things, just, more fringe stuff that I hadn't heard of. Yeah. And also folk. But importantly, like as I was kind of wrapping up high school, I knew I wanted to do music. My parents kind of wanted me to do college. I wasn't so sure about that. And we were all wrestling with what to do. She had a friend who she knew had a studio in Seattle. He had recorded several of her previous albums, and he was now working for Tooth and Nail, and she had heard that he needed an assistant. And so she kind of connected us and thought maybe I could do that. And that was Aaron Sprinkle. And he was working at Tooth and Nail, and she was my connection, and I just kind of flew up there, I think at one point, probably with my mom, and met him. I mean, I was like 18, 19. Wow. Yeah, I was probably 18 at that time.
That's so cool.
And yeah, I mean, I was a nerd. I think I still had like bleached tips. I was like such a California boy. And I just kind of moved up there hoping that would work out, that he would, I could be his assistant and that would go somewhere.
But famously, Aaron Sprinkle's career didn't work out. So
yeah. Well, yeah, we can get into that. The timing was amazing. I had no idea. There was no plan to any of this. Yeah. I was just kind of like following leads, and I also applied to the Cornish music school up there in Seattle, and I got into that. So that was kind of my backup plan, is that I would go there. There was another guy that had a studio in somewhere else in the Seattle area. I forget where. There was, so I had a couple irons in the fire, and Aaron was just kind of the one that worked out. But I mean, it was really cool, but I worked there for free for like 6 months, just kind of hoping that would turn into something paid.
Right.
I think, my memory is so hazy at this point. Maybe it was 3. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I was like just taking out the trash, cleaning the toilets, wrapping up cables,
there you go.
organizing things, anything that they would ask me to do.
That's great. That reminds me a lot of, do you guys know Chris Christopherson started out, I mean, after like being a Rhodes Scholar and in the Air Force and stuff, he started out as a janitor in Nashville at Johnny Cash's studio, and then just like gave him a demo one day, and Johnny Cash was like, oh, fine. The janitor gave me a demo, but I just love, and then turned out to be what it was. Yeah, I don't know. I respect the hustle of just doing whatever needs to be done. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, and Aaron Sprinkle stuck.
Yeah. I mean, and to his credit, he's amazing. He was so kind, so helpful, so patient. And I owe so much to him. So, I mean, I was hardworking, and I definitely like knew how to work Reason and Pro Tools and knew music pretty well, but like he had to bring me along a lot. And I was a young guy. I mean, I was probably such an idiot. So he was very, I don't know, gracious in
but maybe a teachable idiot, right, Zach? Aren't we all?
I would like to think so. I think
at a certain point in our lives, like we gotta learn, and you can either be receptive and absorb the lessons.
I'm in the throes of parenting a teenager right now, teenage guy myself, and it's like I'm recognizing things that I'm realizing were in myself, and it's just like, oh wow,
humbling, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
So funny.
Wow.
Well,
that's
so,
quite the origin story.
Yeah.
That kind of led to, hey, could you do this? Hey, try this. Clean up the toms, like, get rid of all the dead space where the toms weren't playing. Set up this thing. And I tried to just always do the best I could. Tried to be indispensable. And I think eventually they started paying me. And then it just kind of, I got more and more responsibility. Got to the point where I was recording the guitars while he was recording the vocals in the other room. And we were kind of splitting things. Or vice versa. And then I eventually took over the studio that he had been in previously in the basement of the Tooth and Nail offices. Nice. And then I left it all.
Well, we'll get into that too.
We'll get into that.
My wife would be mad at me if we didn't get into that chapter of your career.
Yeah.
I would also like to know the origin of telecasts, because I didn't know if that's what brought you to Tooth and Nail, or if did that develop later?
That developed later, but honestly, that's a huge part of my story. They were one of the first bands that I really got to work with. They wanted piano keys, but they didn't have anybody that did that. This was a common story, and so it was like, hey, can anybody play piano on this song? And I was like, well, I play piano. And so I ended up playing all the keys on that record, which was a lot of, there's quite a bit in there. And then I became friends with Josh. Ultimately, I met my wife through Josh and moved down here. Like much of my real life down here now kind of started in seeds with him. So I met him through Tooth and Nail. And I pulled out this box of like all these CDs from that era. I've never even opened these, but I was just like, what? I know I pulled all this stuff to try to remember what I had done. And I'm looking at this like, oh yeah, there's Telecast.
Awesome.
Josh White from like 2003 or something.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Sweet.
Josh, how do you feel about that as our resident physical media guy?
I mean, he hasn't even opened them, so they're like vintage. Like that's like, it's kind of cool at this point. Like maybe you should keep them sealed, but also like maybe you should open them. I don't know, torn.
Well,
what are some ones in there, just for the listener who may not know the extent of some of the records that you worked on?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did not pre-look at this list because I figured we would do this, and I figured it'd be a fun thing to discover this together.
Perfect.
Okay, so Telecast, Beauty of Simplicity. I played all the keys on this one. Aaron produced it, but I ended up recording a lot of bits of it and then doing all the keys. And then Eternity Is Now was their second record, I think. And I produced that one. That was one of the first ones that I did myself. Demon Hunter, Anberiln, Cities. I think this one, there was one of the Anberiln ones where I pretty much recorded all the guitars with those guys and the bass, and then Aaron was doing the vocals. Benjamin, Activate. Okay, so this was the very first one that like they let me do on my own, and I don't know entirely what the story was, but I don't know what they were expecting, but I think it came out better than they were expecting, and I got to do more stuff. Jaden Labick, I worked with him quite a bit. The Fold. Yeah, I did a couple songs in this EP with the Fold. Actually, so this guy is
cool.
If you have kids and they watch the Lego Ninjago movie,
Ninjago, right? Yeah,
he's the guy, and I recognized his voice. I was like, "Is that?" Yeah,
really? I didn't know that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, actually, this one I loved. Watashiwa, Eager Seas. This record is like, I actually forgot about this, and I listened to it recently. Obviously, not the CD because it's not open, but I'm still really happy with this one. I'm like, all right, another Demon Hunter. I produced it. That was one of the ones I did in the basement.
Just produced it. No big deal.
No big deal.
I mean, they were really good. It was just sort of like helping steer an already good thing. Demon Hunter, I think I worked on 2 of these with these guys.
Yep.
And they're really, really good guys. Mellotron disc, that's random. oh yeah, 80 Camp. So I produced a couple of the songs on her first album. Because I had also worked with Jeremy. There's the original. Oh no, this is Quiet Revolution. I don't remember which Telecast album that was. That's first or second. Oh yeah, Mainstay. Nice. I think I like partially produced this one. I think Aaron started it and then I finished it. And I remember recording the vocals and changing some of the songs. That's cool. Stuff like that. Definitely did some stuff with Sherry. Oh
yeah.
Don't think this is one of the ones I worked on, but I worked on several with her. Another Demon Hunter. Oh yeah, Falling Up. This is one of the first ones that I really got my hands on. Wow. I don't know how they felt about it. I like changed some stuff, and I remember them not being happy. But Aaron was like, "No, we got to keep that." So I don't know.
That's so funny. That's one we've covered on the show.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they were really nice guys. And then Becoming the Archetype. This was one of the ones I did on my own too, and that was like I said, I was like Radiohead, Dave Matthews, like jazz nerd guy. Yeah. I was not metal guy. And so doing that one was so weird and funny for me. Like it came out really good. Yeah, but like musically I was like, wow, this is not my normal thing. But it was fun. And I play that for my kids sometimes. Like, I made this. And they're like,
what? Dad, you're so metal.
Funny. I love that.
Yeah. So there you go. That's probably a good chunk of, I mean, I helped with like TFK.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I've got your whole list. Josh is ready. That I'm like, we're gonna.
Oh, you stocked me already. Okay, good.
Yeah, I already stocked you. You know, at least to what the extent that is on there. Some things may or may not be. You know.
Okay.
So cool. We'll find.
Did I miss anything?
There's some more on there.
Oh, Kutless?
But yeah, definitely some Kutless.
Josh, do you want to go through specifically? Do you want to start with specifically ones that we've talked about on Church?
Terminal. I didn't mention Terminal.
We'll get to
we'll get to Terminal.
I think there's a little anniversary coming up for them for that record. So yeah, I mean we can do that, or we can go like kind of chronological, and also like jump around. But sure, you said was Benjamin the first one that you did?
That was the first one that was like entirely mine to do, start to finish. No help. Yeah.
Do you remember what was the first one that you like worked with Aaron on?
I think it was back to back. The band that became FM Static, they had a different working name. I don't remember what that one was now, actually. And
AM Static.
No, it was something else with an F. But then it was like they had to change it. And then they did TFK. So I think because they're Canadian, I think they came in and just did both of those back to back. Because I was like Trevor and Steven, I think, and a couple of those guys. So it was a long time with the Canadians. I remember that being early on what I helped out with. And I don't think I like pressed record or did much on that. I was just helping, probably getting coffee, food. And then I remember because they had brought in shortly after I got there, Brandon got a SSL console, brought that in there, and then they started flying out J.R. McNeely, and I was the de facto mixing assistant, and so I had to learn a lot there. And I don't think I ever got to where I was really that helpful to him, but I learned a lot. He was a lot of fun. So I remember helping with the mixing of that record. So that was probably one of the first ones. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I was going to ask because you have credits on Phenomenon, but I was like, you probably worked on that first FM Static record too, I would guess. So nice. Those are cool.
Yeah, they were fun. Wow. That was really good stuff. And they were like really, really cool guys. I just remember loving that period.
Was it like a thing whenever, because you were like doing all the interny stuff before, like unpaid intern, and then when you started working, was it a thing like they came to you like, hey, your name is going to be in the credits on this record? Or like, was that like a big moment or like?
Oh yeah. That was really cool. I think I had helped. Oh, okay. Actually, I remember that one. I'm thinking of the next TFK record. That one, we mixed it in Vancouver, because at the time that was the nearest SSL console, and that's what JR liked to work with. So that was my first time meeting him. And we drove to Vancouver and mixed that record there, and I was the assistant. So I think I got assistant credit on that for that. And yeah, it was such a amazing moment to be like, oh my gosh, like my name's going to be in this,
right.
Back when that was a thing that people would read.
When that album came out, did you receive a copy of it? Did you buy a copy of it to see your name in it? Like how did
it was so Tooth and Nail had an office, obviously, and I would a big part of my job was just like shuttling, all around Seattle to go pick up things, tape or hard drives or something from the office. So they had a mail room that was just like all the CDs that were currently out, and they were pretty much available to employees to pick up one if you wanted. There was like a certain room that was sort of like these are copies that are sort of set aside for demos and distribution, or I don't know, but I just knew it was okay for me to grab them from there. So all of these are from that. Like I would grab stuff that I had worked on. That's cool. I was broke. I was
right. Yeah. I know.
I might have made like $10,000 or $12,000 that entire year, maybe. It was like one of those tax returns where they're like, "No, you can just keep it all.
Yeah,
it's fine."
You need this more than we do.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, that was a really cool moment to get to be a part of. I mean, it was a machine there, and they called it the compound. It was one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. So I mean, I was already on to the next thing with Aaron, not wallowing in the victory or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But Telecast might have been one of the first ones after that. It was pretty early on.
No, yeah. I think that one of the first ones in 2003, it has Marvelous Things by Isley, that first Telecast record, and then the Phenomenon record.
Yeah. Marvelous Things was really cool. I mean, there was just a few songs that they did with Aaron, but they were really cool, and I loved their music, and they were just that was like much more my style music. So that was really cool to get to do that. I remember like they were coming from a different label, I think like Sony or something. So it was kind of a bigger deal. So I remember really like deep cleaning the studio because it was a little bit of a
right. Yeah, we have company coming over.
The Duprees got to make sure we got to dress this up a little bit. Yeah.
Hey, let's make this cool. And I mean, it was already cool.
That's so funny. No, I love that. I mean, that's just the 2003. If you look on Discogs going into 2004, that's also. I mean, y'all were just
a huge year.
Yeah, y'all were just.
I was just there at a perfect time.
Because
Aaron had just done a couple really records that kind of took off. He had gone from that. He was in that basement first, and then he and Brandon had kind of worked out to get this studio space in Capitol Hill, where I was. That's kind of where I came on the scene, and so he was kind of on the rise, and Tooth and Nail was on the rise, and I just kind of showed up and jumped on kind of unknowingly because I was not like a Tooth and Nail rock kid. I liked rock, but I wasn't really like deeply into all this stuff. I just really like lucked out with the timing, to be honest.
Wow, that's great. Because you were like Aaron's first assistant, right?
He's been producing for, I mean, he had been...
Well, like the first like Tooth and Nail assistant for Aaron? Because
Maybe. I think there was other people. I don't know. I don't really know.
Okay.
I think I was definitely a good one. I think. I don't know what the situation was before. It's hard to get like reliable, good, cheap, or free people to help you. So I mean, it's probably not.
Well, and it's like a trial run, right? Like that's just like the way it works. You guys are feeling each other out, right? Like you're like, is this a good fit? Does this work?
Yeah.
And he's thinking the same thing.
Right.
So it ended up being a good fit, and
Yeah.
all of us music lovers are the better for it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that list of works is pretty killer. I mean, especially that like 2004 was a big year.
Yeah,
Josh, I feel like you've got some you wanna bring up.
I do.
I mean,
in your Zach, eyes. I don't know how much. If you don't remember like any specifics from like a record or whatever, feel free. That's fine. But if you do like have any stories or anything that comes to mind, like we're down to hear anything and everything about them. I don't have these in chronological release order of the year, but one we already talked about was the first Falling Up record, because that came out early, like February 2004. So that had been pretty early.
Yep. That was probably one of the ones that I was, like I said, first really involved in. I remember they were young. They were like high school, early college young, same as me. And I remember there being tension, lots of, not drama, but just, young people in a pressure situation.
And lots of different opinions and work that needs to get done.
And they were very talented, but young, inexperienced. This is the first time they're doing this, and so I just remember that one coming from like some of the others that were second, third records of people that were pretty seasoned. It was interesting to see what it's like for a band that's just been signed, making their first record, really green to the whole thing. And I was frankly green to the whole thing too. And I was given a lot of license by Aaron to, do stuff. I remember staying up one night and I like totally added this whole 80s synth electronic thing to like, I forget which song, but one of the verses or intros or something. And now I would never do that. It's just like, it's so rude. But I just did it because I was just like a young guy. And I don't know if they loved it, but like, I don't know how much creative control they really had because they were young. It was their first thing. And Aaron was really kind of running the show.
Right.
So I ended up getting a lot of credit on that one. I don't know how they feel about that, to be honest, but they were really, really nice guys. So there was a condo above the studio. So the studio had a main room and a B room, and then like a main, like recording area. So there was a lot there. And then above that, like in the same building, directly above it was a condo. And so Brandon, being the businessman that he is, he had his own label, right? So he's hiring these bands and giving them money to go make a record. And then with that money, they are then coming to his recording studio and paying him for the recording studio. And they're staying in his condo above the recording. It's just like,
right.
That was like one of the first times where I just remember seeing like, you meet these kind of people that they just think in ways that make them money. And it's like a skill that most of us don't have. And I just remember being like, whoa, like, how did you do that?
Right. How did you think of that?
So I was like, I think at that point I was still the one to like clean the condo. But then also the assistant. I remember doing both, and Capitol Hill was kind of a rough area. And I remember, they were all kind of green youth group kids too. And I remember it being kind of a eye-opening, like young kids and the young guys in the world and in the city, some moments like that for them. I remember that was a fun record. I remember really enjoying that one. And it came out really cool. And I think that one I helped with the mix with JR as well.
Oh, nice. How did you mic the turntables? Did you? Because they had turntables on that record, right?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So, man, I don't remember that.
I can't remember what his name. What was his name? Maybe some DJ. I can't remember what his name was on the credits. It was something funny.
Man, I don't remember how that happened, to be honest.
That's so funny.
I should listen to that one again. After this, I'm for sure gonna like go back and listen to all these records. I should have done that before.
Deep dive.
Oh yeah,
We'll make a Zach Hodges playlist for all the stuff that you worked on.
Cool.
Yeah, but Zach, you are in good company. There's so many people that we have on this show that, like, we just had Roman, the bassist for Maylene and the Sons of Disaster. We covered Maylene 3, and he was like, I didn't even listen to this beforehand. You know what? These are pretty good songs. And we're like, glad we could remind you of this thing that you worked on.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's 2020. I mean, I'm 41 and I was like 20 years old at this time. This was a long time ago.
No, they had 20-year anniversaries last year.
Mm-hmm.
Covered a lot of them. Another one that was a big one for 20 years was Dead Poetic's New Medicines.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I want to hear about this one.
Yeah, that one.
Yes.
I recorded and edited all the vocals, which was
Nice.
quite a job. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I
and
bet.
that's where I learned harmony at that point too.
It's funny. Brandon talked about harmonies on that with us on that episode.
Oh yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had kind of been a singer a little bit, but I wasn't like really like a singer songwriter kind of person. Clearly understood the concept of harmony, but like I'd really never like tried to sing harmony. And I remember getting to the point where it was like, okay, now we got to record the background vocals, and realizing like, oh shoot, what does one do for that? And I mean, it was a constant moments like that for me. But kind of figured it out. Just realized, it's just harmony. And I understood, I knew the keys and the theory and everything, and so we figured it out. And then Brandon liked to sing right at and a little beyond the highest notes of his range.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I spent a lot of time with auto-tune in that one, just making sure that it sounded like what he meant it to sound like.
Yeah.
Well, and that record, those songs, like, at least to my mind, there's a lot of really unique melodic and harmonic choices happening on that record. Like,
yes,
the phrasing, the like rhythmic sensibilities that he has, and like the sense of melody that he has is like really fascinating to me and very like strange in a good way.
Yes.
So I can imagine you kind of had your work cut out for you in a way. So it was probably like a really interesting proving grounds.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was more than a musician. He was already like a very good artist and designer, graphic designer. I think he's still doing art
he is.
now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I mean, he came with a very mature sensibility already.
Totally.
Like you said, like there was a lot of depth there. So I didn't feel like I was creating something or fixing something. It was really like just trying to help him bring to life the really
how do you
cool
showcase it?
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I remember just loving working with them. They were so I mean, all those guys, it's just like there's just such an energy to that age, that time, and then like that time in a lot of those people's lives. And I just remembered the like, I don't know how else to call it, just the energy that so many of us had in our early 20s doing all this stuff.
No, I feel like there's something to be said about like your early mid 20s, like the highs are so high, the lows are so low, but then as you get older, everything kind of evens out, and then you just sort of remember more of like the highs. There is something about that energy. There's so many times on this show they're like we're just like, he was freaking 19 when they wrote this part. Like how do you do that? It's just there's definitely a interesting energy about that.
Yeah.
Especially in a band context, and then to compound that with being in a studio and the like pressure, but also like good pressure that can come from like needing to crank out a full album's worth of music.
Yeah.
Like it's this hyperbaric chamber almost of like creativity and emotional energy, highs and lows.
I think that's putting it right. I mean, I definitely saw bands or members of bands leave or be asked to leave, or the person you've been playing with for years that's you knew they weren't that good, but you didn't really realize
Yeah.
it. And then you get in the band and everything's under the microscope and you see like, oh,
Right.
and some of these are like friendships for a
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah.
And you're in the studio and it's all this pressure and you kind of like, it's so,
Yep.
yeah, it's a crucible. It's a
Yeah.
hyperbaric chamber. Those are all correct words. It's a lot of pressure.
For sure.
And what a privilege and like a challenge to have to like help facilitate that process, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Like, do you feel like you looking back, like to maybe avoid what Kyle's saying about like only remembering the highs? Like, if you were to take off the rose-colored glasses, like, do you recall any situations that you were a little challenged by, or like didn't know kind of how to navigate? Like, I'd love to hear some of those challenging moments in the studio.
So I was not somebody that was great with conflict, especially during that time. Life has taught me well. But
honestly, if you can show me a 23-year-old who's good at conflict, I'll be incredibly
I got
surprised.
one for you in about 9 years.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go.
All right. Okay.
There you go.
No, he's actually, I'm very, very proud of who he's becoming. But yeah, I was very timid and just like my heart would race and I just like couldn't even talk. And so we would get into these kind of high pressure situations. And let's see, I'm trying to think of some specifics.
And feel free to share as much or as little detail as you feel like you.
Well,
need
no,
to.
like most of what I can remember, and I'll kind of wrap it in like sort of my own discovery of what my own strengths and weaknesses are, and kind of what my superpowers are. For me, I've found that I'm not the person that's like, I have to write this song. I have this melody in my head that I have to get out. I have to express myself, whatever. But I love creativity. I'm a very creative person. I like to do all that stuff. But you especially in these scenarios, there's always these creative people that just seem like they're just this endless flow of ideas. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm the kind of person that works with those people and helps bring their thing that they can't really bring to life. I bring it to fruition.
Yeah.
I found myself in that
That's a
role
super important role.
many times.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the time, the way that I would solve a tense situation would just be to work harder or take the pressure on myself. So, like if somebody really just couldn't play the part, we would get it as close as we could, and then I would shift all the pieces around and edit it and make it so that it did sound like they played that. And I actually developed like pretty bad carpal tunnel, like hand problems from just all the mouse work that I was doing, all the editing.
I believe it.
But I would just always sort of take that upon myself because I wasn't in a place where I could be like, you need to just go practice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I would never have said that.
Yeah.
I probably should have, and sometimes. But honestly, like a lot of the people were really good. Let's see. I'm trying to think of like difficult situations.
Or even like maybe moments where you watched Aaron handle that kind of stuff and
he was
from that.
He was really good with that. So like my difficulties were, working late hours, just literally sleeping on the couch in the studio, things like that. And he did that sometimes too, but just not really having any balance, any resemblance of an adult life. But he was obviously much more mature, very gregarious, very personable, but then also able to take command and
he's got a little bit of a no nonsense vibe to him.
At that point, it was hard to challenge him if he was like, "Hey, we should do this. This is right."
Right.
It would usually kind of silence the room. So I remember there being plenty of moments like that with a band like Falling Up. They're new, and so he just kind of, "Hey, we'll do this." Whereas like with Isley, he was like so stoked to work with them and just it was very collaborative. And I mean, they didn't really need much help. Like their songs were so cool. And then I remember like when Jeremy Camp came, it was a lot of pressure because he had a very successful first album and it was a big moment for Aaron to get to do some songs with him on this next album. But just he handled the pressure so gracefully and creatively, and I knew that he was feeling that pressure, but he just didn't look like he was under any pressure at all.
He didn't let it rock him.
No, and he got everything
Nice.
sounding great and was very, kind of got everybody happy, and so he was really good with that. But then he was also good with the young guys that just never done this before and just kind of get in a decent amount of time, getting something out the door. And I became a part of that equation too. Like we would split things up.
It sounds like you guys really had to develop this skill of understanding how like set a sculpture is, right? If the band is like made of clay or something, it's like how set in stone is this group, is their sound, is their dynamic, how sure are they of themselves and their skill level and their creative like vision? How set is it? Is it still wet? Is the clay still moldable? And does it actually need a little help, like kind of being sculpted? Or is it really close to being dry and it just needs like some tiny tweaks and supports here and there?
To actually,
that's like a crazy thing to have to figure out as a creative support.
Yeah. To take that just a little bit further, Zach, I want to ask you, how did y'all sort of develop that? Like, how did you like
that being? Sorry,
like kind of determining like how much work you guys were going to do for each project, like where y'all figured out where you would split stuff up, how talented the band was, like would bands come in and do like a day of rehearsal and you guys kind of all talk about it, or like what was the system you guys developed?
I mean, again, so much as, especially in like 2004, 2005, I mean, Aaron was the genius and I was just helping him. But yeah, there would usually be, and I followed this pattern when I started doing stuff myself too. There'd be a few days of kind of like pre-production where we're just kind of playing through the songs. Maybe we get a rough to the click thing on, in Pro Tools with just everybody playing live. And then you can kind of start listening back and realizing like, oh, this part feels a little too long, or what if we cut this and move it here? You can start kind of messing with the arrangements.
So during that time, are you like actively like taking notes? Or are you
like
just kind of
level and stuff?
Vibing?
Like, okay, we'll need to coach this here or something.
Vibing?
I think it's probably more mental notes. Because, just having them play through the songs, you get a pretty quick meter of like,
feel for things.
Hey, where are they really at?
Sure.
Is the drummer on the click? Are they all playing together? And then, you can just solo that track and like, oh, he's making a lot of mistakes. Or, whatever. And editing, especially at that time, I think we kind of, I don't know if we've come away from that or not, but at that time there was a real emphasis on things being pretty dang polished in Pro Tools. And there was definitely a blowback against that pretty quickly, but in that it was still pretty new. And so we were doing, Beat Detective, auto-tune, just nudging everything, like zooming in and getting every transient lined up and stuff. And so, to a certain extent, it was like, well, they're close enough and we can make it all right. But then you want to make sure that the live performance is good enough that the difference isn't, unmanageable for people. And, Aaron would do smart things like he would have them get all of their guitars set up by a really good guitar tech in town, and they would use those guitars on the record, or at least some of them. But then they would have like instruments that are in really good shape as they head out onto the road to then go play their shows. And now that was just, he was a person who had been a songwriter, been a touring musician. So he just kind of knew these things and he was really smart about that. And that was another one of my jobs. Is like, oh, let's take all the band's guitars to the guitar tech guy.
Nice.
And then, we'd be bringing in a drum tech. So like, we'd always start with drums. That was usually the first thing that you do like for real, because that's kind of the foundation under everything else. and it's like the most work usually. And there'd be a drum tech that would come in and kind of get everything sounding good. And a lot of times the drummer was really stoked about that, or maybe the first time that they had learned some of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can say more. Like Aaron and I weren't like having secret conferences
Right.
when the band was gone or something. Like
Sure.
I was, I would just do what he asked me to do.
Yeah.
When it was my turn to kind of do some of these things, I was doing the same thing, and you could kind of get a sense of what this is going to be like. And sometimes it's like, oh gosh, this is going to be a difficult.
Could be
month.
a lot of work.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Like I hope that couch is warm, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, like that Becoming the Archetype record that I did, that was really fun. But I mean, the guys wanted to change time signatures and tempos like every 20 seconds, and
one of those.
And then they were also wanting to do, and this is just a standard metal band thing,
Right.
just as many complicated things all in one time as possible.
Yeah.
And I wasn't given an infinite budget to just do as many takes until we got it. And so it was like piece by piece by piece. And like, I feel like I got my like editing merit badge on that record, because it was just so much work. And that was before Pro Tools had like cool things to like change the tempo really smoothly. I had to like insert these markers or like multiples of them to try to like cascade it down to that other tempo. And, oh my gosh.
Dang.
That was so,
wow.
that was so hard.
Yikes.
But again, it's not that they were bad musicians at all. It's just that in the crucible of the recording, where it's like, this has to line up to the click. Like, here's the bar and here's your hit. Like, where is it? Almost everybody, but like the top end studio musicians falls a little short of that bar. And then when you do work with those people that are like the studio players, and you come in and like they just nail it on the first take,
lock it in,
insane. You're like, oh,
you're like,
there's a whole nother level of musician that I am not.
Well, that's
worthy.
that's the thing that I think most like lay people, like people that haven't played music live and recorded music, don't understand. It's almost like a kind of different skill set to play in a studio setting versus playing live. Like you have to, you're flexing completely different muscles.
Yeah.
Well, and it's been a weird thing to then like carry into my life beyond music, because I play worship music at my church and doing a lot of things, and I still do a lot of music, and I have all this information in my head, but it's hard to tell somebody like, oh, just you're rushing, just kind of back off a little bit or whatever. Like that could be multiple days in the studio to get them to that point.
Right.
Sometimes I just hear things and it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll move on from that. I'll just suffer in silence.
Let it go. That's what we've been saying. My 4-year-old daughter is obsessed with Frozen, and so we use Let It Go for everything. Everything. Oh, you had an accident?
Just let it go.
Let it go. Oh, you're screaming right now? Let it go. So that's been my mantra.
As a real Serenity Now move for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's funny.
Yeah, so I wish I could think of like some better horror stories to tell you guys.
No, this is fun. No, dude, this is great.
Okay.
We're loving this.
When we get to Terminal, like they were awesome, but I remember being so stressed and like really having a hard time with them. For reasons that were both of us. We can get to that, but
okay.
With Aaron, he always kind of bared the brunt of that. I didn't realize how good he was at that until I was on my own.
Right. Yeah. That's part of the job, right? And you learned that when you stepped into the role a little more.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a lot to learn. We can get to Terminal in a second. I do just want to call out like some other 2004 releases, and I want to know like you're talking about just like things coming in, like just people coming in and whatnot. Because you've got like Jeremy Camp that you said, Kutless, Demon Hunter. Like, is it weird going from like, oh, I'm working on a Kutless record to then I'm working on a Demon Hunter record, then I'm working on a Dead Poetic record, then I'm like, is it like
it was kind of all over
those
the place.
Big jumps, like the BEC versus Tooth and Nail side of things?
Yeah. Honestly, I loved it because I just loved music. I still do. I listen to all kinds of things, and I love getting better and being challenged, and having to learn how to do a metal record was really cool. And then having to learn how to do a pop record, and then the kind of all the in between things. And so I was totally there for it. Like I think 80 Camp stuff was the farthest opposite of the solid state metal and everything.
Right.
And I just really enjoyed that because I don't listen to one genre of music myself. I bounce all around, and it was fun to get to work with a lot of different kinds of people and different styles of music. And
so what kind of overlap was there in terms of like, the work that you were doing specifically on these albums? Like,
overlap as in
like
time,
would you
or
do,
what do you mean?
yeah, like would you do just like, okay, this chunk of time is completely blocked out, I'm just working on this record, then I'm jumping to the next record, or it's like, okay, we're kind of finishing the tail end of Jeremy Camp, we're starting pre-production on Demon Hunter. Like I'm curious about the logistics of switching between all those.
It was a pretty tight schedule. There was certainly, I had nights and weekends, hypothetically, and I took vacations and stuff. But Brandon ran a pretty tight ship, because I mean, if that place is sitting empty, it's not making money. And so I feel like it was usually pretty close. You all know, like no creative project ever goes exactly how you mean it to, and especially it rarely finishes exactly when you think it will.
Yeah.
So we would do everything we could to, have a whiteboard with check boxes of every song and all the parts that needed to be made, and try to get it to finish by the last day. But sometimes the person, like with Terminal, we had to record the vocals later on separately, to kind of finish some things, and that was common. So maybe Aaron was starting pre-production and I was finishing editing the vocals of the last thing or whatever, getting it ready for mix, or we would be mixing in the A studio, and then Aaron was doing pre-production with the next band in the B room.
There you go. Okay. Was there ever a time where you had to like make a sort of switch like halfway through the day? Like was there ever that much
probably.
of a crossover? Like where you're like, all right, we're wrapping up Jeremy Camp. Let's go into becoming the archetype.
Yeah. I mean, probably. I don't remember. It wasn't really jarring because for me it was all music. Just in opening up Pro Tools and the same room, same stuff. So it was just different projects within the same job, the same context.
There was never a day where Jeremy Camp came in and you're like, oh, okay, sweet, we're gonna, and then you open up the Demon Hunter session and he's just like, what's going on?
Oh, he would have thought that was cool. I mean, he loved it. And I think most of the people that were on the label understood that that's how things were, and they thought that was cool, or at least understood it. And sometimes it was like, oh, I want to, I want to hear the unreleased Anberiln or whatever.
Right.
So usually people were stoked about that. Obviously, if it was cutting into their time, that was not cool. But
yeah.
And
that melding
sometimes
of genres is like exciting because it like can a lot of times spur on new creative energy in the band or the artist.
We're listening to it with ears that were just doing something else, and maybe we have ideas that we wouldn't have had if we were just completely saturated in that one kind of music.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense. That is nectar to my ADHD ears.
Nectar in your ears. Okay.
Yeah. Nectar in my ears, man. Welcome to Church Hymns Now.
Have you guys heard the new Bon Iver album?
Sable Fable? Sorry, I stole your joke.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow, that's
literally
so
just
good and original, Kylan. I've never heard that before. I love that.
Everything is peaceful love, you guys. So I'm not mad that you're stealing jokes, Kylan.
Ooh.
Everything is peaceful love.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to walk home. Actually, no, TJ, can you tell us the short story on the new album?
I mean, it's great. I think my take on it from what I've read and interviews and such is it's this really cool look back to his For Emma Forever Ago cabin days. He's like, Kylan, you'll appreciate this as a fellow sad boy. he's looking back at his like Sad Boy Cabin solo singer-songwriter days and honoring that with some excellent songs. And it literally comes as two separate records, one at 45 RPM and one at 33.
Yeah.
So the first part of this album is just the Fable or the Sable EP. And then it moves us into the Fable era, which is just in like being a little more triumphant and celebratory and happy and like opening up to himself and the world around him, and moving into the present moment. And we're seeing a little more of the production from more recent albums and themes that are a little brighter. And I just love that as, you know, a concept on an artistic level and as physical media that you can get that sort of supports the idea of like a two-part story. It's great.
And it's cool, it's cool that the vinyl does come in the two records, the 45 and the 33.
Yeah.
If I wanted to get this in physical media on vinyl or CD, you know I like both.
Yeah.
Is there a good place for me to do that?
Nope.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think that exists.
Do I have to go to a Bon Iver show and just wait at the merch table?
You have to go to a cabin
even then,
in Wisconsin.
They might sell out.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
I think it was like a
cabin.
geocache situation. But guess what? I have good news. You don't have to go geocaching through the woods of Wisconsin. You can go to colliderecords.com.
It's not a fable. I'm willing and able to purchase it.
But guess what?
That's great.
You will have to pay for the Sable Fable vinyl LP.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I know that's
You gotta
bad
pay
news.
for it?
Yeah,
I mean,
you
I
gotta
want
pay
to
for it.
support Justin in his endeavor, so I think
True.
that's fair.
But
Yeah.
good news, bad news. Or bad news, good news.
Okay.
You do have to pay for it.
All
But guess
right.
what? You don't have to pay full price. Do you want to know why?
Sweet.
Why is that?
I've got a handy little life hack for you.
Fingers?
If you use your fingers, type in Church Jams Now at checkout. Guess what? You get 20% off your entire first purchase.
What?
So you can get Sable
That's
and
incredible.
Fable packaged together on multiple types of media, on vinyl, on CD, and get 20%
At 20% off.
Man,
That's crazy.
that's so good.
love
I'm going to
it.
do that right now. If only I could wait for it to arrive and be patient, but I guess I'll have to.
It'll feel like award season when it comes in the mail.
Oh,
Josh.
it sure will. And you know what? Otherwise, other awards that are available, they got a good amount of the rest of the Bon Iver catalog as well on the
Nice.
in stock. So if you guys are missing stuff in your catalog, do some perusing.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Once again, you can fill up your entire cart with whatever Bon Iver or other things that you want from colliderecords.com. And if you type in promo code ChurchJamsNow at checkout, you get 20% off your entire first purchase. colliderecords.com.
Is this a fable, Kylan?
Au revoir.
No, it's real.
Okay, Josh, do you have a plan?
Well, we can move into 2005 and talk about Terminal.
That was
I'd love
my
to
plan.
hear- Yeah,
Look at that.
I think we're
Okay.
on the same page, you know?
Let's see. Hold on.
Love it.
Let me back up for a sec. So we didn't talk about. I want to hit a few that I thought were
Oh,
really
yeah,
fun.
please.
So I loved working with Anberiln. I think I got to work with them twice.
Was that on Never Take Friendship Personal?
Never take friendship personal. It might have just been that one.
'Cause I think
remember-
Randy was doing cities.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it was just never take friendship personal, and I just remember loving that one, and they were like so good.
Yeah.
It was just. I mean, and by that time, Aaron and I were working together a lot. I recorded all the drums. I'm sorry, all the guitars, maybe the bass, while he did the drums and vocals. And certainly, like he was approving everything and directing it. But
Right.
like, I really got to get my hands dirty and set the amps and work on the
Nice.
parts. But they were so good. It was just pretty easy.
So I do have a question for you. Do you have a preference on which version of Feel Good Drag you prefer? The Never Take Friendship Personal version or the New Surrender version? That's a big thing that's come up on this show.
I am. I got to be honest. I'm not deep in it enough to know that those were a thing.
Yeah, they
I have not
re-recorded Feel Good Drag on their for their major label debut.
Oh.
And it's become a thing within Anberiln fandom where I think there's like a certain, it's almost like there's a certain division, I feel like, between listeners of the band on which version they prefer. Stephen Christian has called the people that like the Never Take Friendship personal version. What did he say, Josh? We're hipsters.
All I know is he took it personal.
He did take it personal. That people like that version more.
It was not a feel good drag.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just
funny.
I don't have
we
an
have
opinion.
a lot of fun
Sorry.
with it.
Acceptance was another one that I really enjoyed.
Oh yeah,
Same.
They
here,
were
too.
awesome, and that's like one of the few ones that, like, sometimes like worship, the people at church will find out that I worked on that one, and they'll be like, "What?" So somehow that one has had some staying power. They were awesome, and that was an interesting one where it was like there was a lot of excitement around maybe it was going to really blow up. But the songs were so cool, the parts were so cool. I remember really enjoying that one. Demon Hunter was also great, and those guys. So they were the graphic design kind of department at Tooth and Nail as well. And that's a big part of my story. Is one of my best friends, Greg Lutzi, was also an intern with them at the same time that I was an intern with Aaron. So we kind of interned and became kind of came up together, and then we became lifelong friends. He actually ended up being one of the co-founders of VSCO, which is where I've now worked for 13 years as well. So like our stories kind of started with Asterisk and Tooth and Nail and all of that.
That's so cool.
He was, with Demon Hunter, and I was, with all those guys constantly. It was really fun to work on those records, and that was kind of my first foray into like metal too. Was working with them, so that was fun.
Well, that as far as intros into metal, I say you can't get much better than Demon Hunter.
Yeah, and I remember them having like the the baritone guitar. It was like the drop B. It was just so cool. Wow, it felt
that's
awesome.
Wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's nuts.
Josh, we're going to talk about Terminal. Are you feeling Terminal? You're still feeling slightly Terminal,
just a tad. But you know what? I could go more Terminal. I think.
Let's do it. Go for it.
We can't lose Josh.
This is the end of the podcast.
This is the way I want to go, TJ.
Is it worth it, Kylan?
Yes.
All right, fair enough.
The jokes are just underlining the very unfortunate nature of that name. It was just almost a prophecy.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Josh. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you mentioned that this was like one of the bigger ones, I guess, for you to like take the reins on full production. How did like that come about? Like, was that like, did you like pitch yourself, or like did like Aaron suggest you taking the reins, or how did that happen?
Great question.
Honestly, like I think I can credit Aaron and Brandon Ebel just for really believing in me. And honestly too, like I'm sure I was cheap, good labor. And so I don't know. But I had done the Benjamin record, and that, actually finished and came out pretty good. And I had helped Aaron with a lot of things. So I had a good track record at that point. And I don't remember, I honestly don't remember who brought it up. I don't think it was me. But Brandon and I and Aaron, we kind of all decided to resurrect the basement studio that Aaron had been in the Tooth and Nail offices in Magnolia in Seattle, which was like a windowless room, very dark and depressing. But I was just stoked, and I got a budget to put together a new studio down there. And I think Terminal might have been the first band that I did down there, if not one of the first. So it was like the new studio, my first time being on my own, like really with the full band. And it was awesome. I was so excited to do it, totally ready for it. And they were great guys. Their songs were good. I love their music. But the thing I think where we kind of started hitting some skids was both like my own I guess, inexperienced. So I had kind of worked with Aaron, who had a kind of way of working. And we had some amps that we would always use, and we had these drums that we would always use. And Terminal came in, and I quickly started realizing, they were saying like they didn't want to have the tooth and nail sound, which I didn't really know what that meant. And it kind of came to a head when we got
been around that long by that point too. Like, maybe
I don't
years?
know.
Yeah, but it was like enough big records, right? That I think that did sort of establish.
Well,
ideology.
By design, we had a factory that was just, we were running everybody through this thing. And so I get what they were saying, especially now in hindsight. Like, I think I'm on their side. Like, there was kind of a like, okay, we plug into this amp and we do this thing. And we had done that a lot. And they wanted something different. So it kind of came to a head. I'm getting ahead of myself, but kind of came to a head when it came time for guitars. I went over to the Compound studio and grabbed some of that stuff that they weren't using and brought it over to my studio. And I was like, sweet, I'm ready. We're going to do this thing. It's going to be great. And we started dialing up guitar tones and stuff. And they were just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. We're not really feeling it. And that was like, nobody had ever said that before. And I was just what?
Wow.
We are off of my map. What do we do now? Mean?
Zach, I just want to bring up the fact that you're answering my question from earlier. So
okay, good.
We have come full circle.
Yes.
Proceed.
Good.
Proceed.
And like I said, I was not Mr. Conflict. I was not good at that. And so where we ended up was working with Chad Johnson, I believe, who was their A&R guy, who kind of was like, well, hey, can we rent some other amps? And we did, and they kind of made a list of the ones that they wanted, which were really cool amps, like a JCM 800 was one of the main ones, and I think there might have been an orange head. But we rented some cool amps and used those, and that was okay in the budget. And so we used those instead, and it gave the record a different sound, and it ended up coming out really cool. But that was like, I remember that moment, and then also recording the drums just really being like sweat moments for me, because Aaron had always the drums was that Aaron always did that, and I would help, but that was not something that I had ever like fully done myself, and I wasn't able to do it at the Compound studio, the one that I had been at.
Right.
We rented a studio whose name is escaping me right now, but
was that like because of the schedule, like time limitations or something like that?
And my studio was too small to do drums. I didn't have, you need a lot of preamps, a lot of mics, a lot of everything. It's expensive. Right. So we went to a different studio to do drums, which was a common thing. And so I'm at this studio, still green. This is my first record really doing this by myself. And there's this guy who's the assistant there who's honestly as good or better at me than all this stuff. And he's asking me these questions like, well, which preamps do you want to use on the toms? And I'm just kind of like, I don't even know the difference between those two things, but I don't want to say,
right.
I don't want to say that. Like, well, what do you usually do? Where do you usually put that mic?
The usual's fine. The usual's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
But I remember
so
just
here in the corner,
having to just leave at one point. It's just like walk and go get a coffee, and just, really. It was really stressing me out. And then it was another one of those things where drummer was really good, but wanted to push to the very edges of his ability and all the parts that he was doing, which meant a lot of work for me. But thankfully it all came together, and then we moved everything to the basement studio. And I think they might have been still staying in the studio or the condo above the main studio. I can't remember. Or maybe they would also find like a long-term hotel type thing,
right,
as well. So it was one of those two. And then we started kind of going out through everything, and then I remember with pre-production, we kind of did that thing, and I kind of worked with them on changing a few things, and it was like definitely a kind of a feeling each other out moment. And I think I feel like we all kind of started realizing like, okay, this can work, and because they were having to kind of trust that I could do this too. I mean, I'm like barely any older than them. I was 21 doing this thing for the first time. So yeah, it was a bumpy ride, but like it was also a lot of fun, and they were really good. I mean, there was no like musicianship issues. They were great. And then I'm spacing on the is it Travis? Is he the singer?
Travis Bryant. Yeah.
Travis.
Right.
Should have looked this up beforehand, but he was really, really cool guy. Just had like, I don't know, like such a energy, like fills the room kind of energy, and just a really interesting, cool voice. And so it made my job easy as far as making it, but just the like getting a bunch of headstrong 18, 19, 21-year-old guys together. And, hey, if this is the first time you've all done this, go.
Yeah, good luck.
that was a trial, but we made it through. And then I remember, for whatever reason, we mixed it in Nashville, where JR was, and so I just, instead of him flying out to us, usually like they would line up several records that need to be mixed, and he would come out for like a week or two and just bust them all out. And this was just a one-off thing. So I flew out to him with the hard drive of the record, and we pulled it all up in a studio there in Nashville and mixed it one at a time. And actually, I remember there was a vocal part that was missing, and I just did it. I grabbed the mic, and I think I had an inbox on my laptop and just like snuck it on there real quick.
Nice.
It was like, oh shoot, we forgot to do this one. So I'm in there somewhere. I cannot remember where, but there's like a harmony buried in the background.
That's so
me.
funny.
Wow. And it all came together. I remember like getting to the end of that and playing that for some friends and just being like, oh my gosh, like I did this and it's really good.
Yeah.
And then the artwork was really cool, and it just felt like such a victory to get through that. So I remember, a lot of good memories, some stressful memories, but
yeah,
overall good.
It was hard earned. It was a victory that you really worked for.
Yeah.
Which those oftentimes matter the most, you know?
Yes. And I remember finishing with Travis. I think we had to record a few vocal parts and then like acoustic versions of some of the songs. And he came back later on, and we just had like a couple days or a week or something doing that, just the two of us. And I remember just like we went and got sushi, and it was kind of more chill.
Nice.
It was nice. Like I feel like I remember talking about like some life situations that were overlapping and having a good moment with him. So he was a great guy.
That's cool.
I mean, yeah, that record turned out great. I know a lot of people really love it. So
I was delighted to, like, when I think you guys reached out to me about that originally, and I was like, wow, people, that's still like, I haven't heard anybody mention that name or any of these names really in 20 years. So I was like, but people still listen to this stuff? That's cool.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a big one. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a couple that come up when I think about it. I mean, like that and Phantoms, like I hear people just talking about all the time. Like those are some really big records.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like for you guys, were you in high school youth group? Like, and these were the records that you were growing up with, I assume. And like, what is all this to you?
Oh man, interviewed on our own show, TJ.
Yeah, flipping the script on us here, Zach.
It's fun. Like,
I love it. No, these are fun moments. I think we might be a little bit like in a different age bracket, slightly, but you know, a lot of these records that you're credited for work on were definitely like big, heavy hitters for like high school and college, kind of that era. And yeah, I mean, what we find out a lot of times on this show is different records hit us at different times. So some of us are like big fans of certain bands or artists, and we know their whole discography and we've been with them since the beginning. Others of us like don't know any album from that same band.
Like,
but
I famously
like a zeitgeist.
was completely unaware of Dead Poetic until we covered that record. But that was like a
Case in
huge
point.
one for you, TJ.
Yeah, big for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just goes to show like the genre and the world and the scene of like the sort of Christian, like CCM and alternative Christian music is actually pretty broad and deep. And so there can be a lot of pockets of it that get missed, but there's also ones that, you know, we have in common. Like, I mean, also I got to throw out The Week's End. Like, you've got some credits on that Emery album. We got to talk to Devin. That was an excellent episode.
Oh gosh, I loved Emery. They were so great.
Did you work on The Question too?
No,
Because it was not okay. It wasn't on your
But-
list.
because I mean they were brilliant, like just doing almost so much of it themselves already at that point. I helped with, so there was like a single where it was like, oh, we're going to be on this 80s record where you're covering a song, and they did
Nice.
one
Yeah.
of those, and I helped
Punko's
them with
80s.
that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
90s. I saw you have the which one? They have the All I Want, the Toad the Wet Sprocket song.
That's
and then
the 90s.
Holding
The
Out for a
80s one is holding
Hero.
out for a hero.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's great.
I love that cover. I used to play that for people all the time when that came out because there's that like crazy discordant breakdown. Like, they're like, oh, hey, you know this song, right? Everyone's like, yeah, okay. And it's like, no, this gets wild.
Have you heard this version?
Yeah, so I got to work with them a little bit, and
Cool.
they were really, really interesting and really cool, and just like good people, like
Mm.
they really cared,
Mhm.
they really loved. And they were like, at one point, they were all in like one room and like 3 or 4 bunk beds, just out in the woods somewhere. Like,
That's the most Emery thing I've ever heard.
yeah, like, they were such a singularity.
Yep.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's so cool.
to piggyback on TJ's answer to your question, I feel like for me personally, like a lot of the records specifically that Tooth and Nail was doing around this time were incredibly influential to me as a musician because that was right around the time I started like writing music and listening to music seriously.
Yeah.
Like and a lot of it is kind of the basis for this show, right? Because like our whole idea is, we have these rose-colored glasses, we have this nostalgia for this music, and then now that we're like adults, like we're all parents, and we're so far removed from that, but we're still musicians. Like we want to take a look and see, like, was this good on its own, or was it just good because our youth pastor told us we had to listen to MXPX instead of Blink 182, right?
Right.
Like,
the church got the sampler, and so we had to listen.
Yeah, I've tried to describe that time to my kids because, like, we don't really have that anymore. That whole kind of like, we're
No.
making a Christian version of this thing,
right.
kind of, but it's like it feels like all the energy of Christian music has trying to move to worship music, and like,
Yes, 100%.
churches have really taken over
Yep.
what labels were 20 years ago,
right?
Yeah.
which is really
So
cool. But then has its own problems.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was already a jaded church kid coming into Tooth and Nail, and continued to be jaded. But now, especially in time, I'm kind of like, there was some kind of cool stuff about that, and part of me wishes that my kids could have. And there is some of those things, like I was saying with the Forrest Frank concert.
Yeah, there's a
but
little
like
bit of
we
that, but it's a little it's
different.
It's interesting because it's almost like Christian or like CCM, was sort of like almost like a monoculture, and then
It
the
was,
sort of
yeah.
like Tooth and Nail 5-minute walk, and then later like Solid State and like all this like
Mhm.
it started to branch out into more alternative
Right.
kind of stuff, but now CCM has become a little bit, it's almost circled back around to being kind of like a monoculture with your
Yeah.
Forrest Franks and your Brandon Lakes and your Hill songs and all this stuff. It's just, it's interesting
either
how
it's like it
cyclical
starts with a
that is.
pad and like a single piano chord and like a
Yeah.
that's it, or it's like
Right. Yeah.
like there's nothing in between.
Right. Right.
And actually, I feel like there's like a lot of gospel stuff that's really kind of starting to
Mhm.
like. I find myself having to learn these like really hard songs at church now, which is fun. So it's interesting to just see the winding path that this thing takes. But there
Yeah.
was a lot of good in that past, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful that you all are appreciating it.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I do just want to say, for me, there's a lot obviously I could talk about. We have a podcast for that reason. But like, I think like Beheaded, which was like the third track on Summer of Darkness, was like, I think one of the first times I ever heard screaming. My cousin showed it to me, and I was like, what is this? I was like kind of scared, but also like intrigued
Kinda
by
scared,
it. Yeah. I was like, I am a little off put by this, but I'm also want to know more. So like that was like, obviously like that was like a big introduction to like the world of heavier music was through hearing that song from Demon Hunter and then getting that record and getting further into it. So it's cool just being like, hey, that song that you helped make 21 something years ago was my gateway into all that stuff.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. Like without social media, like you only heard what people would like tell you or email you or something.
Right.
So
Yeah.
still cool
So
to hear that.
I, that's something that like I've been excited to talk to you specifically, Zach, because like we talk to a lot of guys that were in the bands making these records, and we've talked to Aaron, but like I'm so curious as to like what your perspective was on some of these records where this was just like your job, right? Like so a record like for a band is such a creative output, and it's like you put your heart and your soul and all of your emotions out into this like piece of art that then you go tour and you do that and you kind of live in that for a long time. Right. And for you, you're still like, you're also putting in that same amount of effort, but then the record's done and you're moving on to the next record. That's just such a fascinating perspective to me.
And I think it was kind of a unique situation too, because of the connection of the label and the studio, there was just this kind of revolving door of work. And I don't know that that's super normal for a lot of like working producers and stuff. So really fortunate with that. But yeah, I mean, after the band was gone, maybe they would come by if, when they like played a show in Seattle, they might come by and say hi. Right. And I get to see him and say hi, I got hugs. Oh, it's cool to see you. Your record's so good. Whatever. But like, that was kind of the end of it. And then maybe if they came back for another thing. So it was, and I wouldn't say it was like, oh, it's just a job and I didn't care. Right. We all poured our blood, sweat, and tears into making these things good. And there's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation from everybody. And it reflects on me. And, I was just getting started and young and wanting to prove myself. And so I was always just pouring everything into everything. But
you did have to probably like reset every time, and that it's a little bit.
I
of
would
work,
say I came out of it after like 3.5 years with definitely some burnout, and that's just like my own inability to manage myself at 21, or 22. But I remember getting to a point where I was just like, I don't even really want to listen to music anymore. Like I just. I'm so fried from music.
I get that.
And that was really kind of why I picked up photography. As like, I needed a hobby that wasn't music, but I had never, I would get home and I would do music. Like that's all I knew. I needed a new thing to do.
Right. Okay. That honestly transitions perfectly. I told Josh ahead of time that I wanted to talk about VSCO.
No. Oh yeah. We have to talk about it
a little bit. So I'm a designer and an animator, and my wife is a designer, and she's one of the I think she introduced me to VSCO.
Nice.
Cam back like at the very beginning. Oh yeah, at the very beginning. It was like there was on Insta, you had the Hipstamatic or whatever it was called app, and then it was like VSCO Cam came out and it was like, okay, that thing was cheesy. This is like, like you can do like real legit photos on your iPhone. So I don't know how much our audience or my co-hosts are interested in this, but I want to talk. I want to talk about
it, but I would love to hear about it.
Okay, so I'll try to like briefly get you from like I'm this up and coming person at Tooth and Nail to I'm there.
Well, and is that something that they were thinking you were going to be like, either like you and Aaron would be like their two producers, or that you would kind of take over and Aaron would like ascend to like another role? Is that what they were expecting, or
maybe? I definitely, I think that there was a lot of opportunity for me, and I think Brandon was very gracious, very, encouraging, and I think it was mutually beneficial. So I definitely had a great future if I wanted it, and it could have been that we made another studio, or the basement studio just kept going, or whatever. For me, really, what happened, it was kind of several things. I was super young, and at the same time, I had come up in this, Christian home. Everything was pretty good, and then I left, and back home in the Bay Area, my parents divorced, and everything just back at home kind of started unraveling. And that kind of pulled the rug out from under my feet. It was kind of like, whoa, wait, okay. And it got me thinking a lot about, like, who do I want to be? What do I want my life to be? What kind of, when I'm in my 40s, how do I make sure this kind of stuff doesn't happen?
Right.
And so kind of started doing a lot of soul searching, and just sort of realized, like, I didn't love who I was becoming in this environment, both Seattle and just that kind of the grind I was subjecting myself to at tooth and nail. And that's nobody's fault. That's just myself. But I looked around and realized, I want to be a really good husband, a really good father one day. And I just don't see how I'm going to be able to pull that off as who I'm becoming now. I kind of saw myself going in a direction that I didn't like. And just looking around me, and I'd worked with other people from the industry would come in. Oops, sorry. And I got a good sampling of what the people that work in the music industry for a long time, especially like producers and engineers and stuff, like what that life kind of tends to look like. And I just kind of realized, like, I just don't think I'm going to be able to do the life that I want to have in this business. And it's not to say that it can't be done. I just, I could see that myself, like, I was headed in a direction that I knew was not who I wanted to be.
For sure. I get that. I mean, you watch like one interview with Brian Eno or Steve Albini, and you're like, oh, you're like kind of an asshole. Like you kind of have to, like, at a certain point, you kind of, like, you're in this a while. It takes its toll.
Well, I think any creative career is like that, where there's so many people that want to do this. That means that there's a lot of people trying, and that means that, there's not a lot to go around, and everybody's competing, and you have to be willing to do more, better, faster, cheaper than everybody else, which means you're putting everything on the altar of doing that. And, at 19, 20, 21, I could do that, but I realized
for sure,
I can't do this in my 30s. I can't do this in my 40s.
Yep.
That's no kind of a life. And so, but it's true of a lot of creative careers. It's not just music,
100%.
But music is a little extra. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I had picked up photography as a hobby, like I said, because I needed something else to do. Greg, my roommate, was a photographer, and then Jared Knudsen, amazing photographer. He was. We had this like 2-bedroom apartment in Ballard in Seattle that had like 2 bunk beds in each room, and it was just this kind of revolving door of like designer, musician, artist people. And I think we all paid like $200 or $400 a month or something. It was nothing. Split off between 4 or 5 of us. But I was surrounded by these great photographers and designers and artists and stuff. And so I realized, like, oh, photography is kind of cool. And these people, and I started to like look like what other kind of careers are people doing that they seem to be like kind of happy and well adjusted. And photographers seem like they were doing okay. So I had a pastor friend through Josh who had an opportunity for me to shoot for their church's magazine, which I really think was just him kind of helping me out. But he was like, why don't you just come like live at our house for the summer, and you can do this and just sort of, figure out your life. Because I was calling him for kind of like counseling too. This is Ted Leavenworth. And so I was like, okay. So I kind of wrapped everything up I was doing. I think 7 Places was my last record, which was a sort of a weird, it ended strangely. And I had a brief second at SPU. tried college one more time, and then moved down with him and picked up photography. And I still did some music projects. I think I did Telecast, Jaden Lavick. Greg and I did 2 records of the Risers, which was like a kids rock
Oh yeah.
to Bible verses. But really photography kind of took over. And I was in this kind of suburb, Southern California town. There wasn't like a ton of creative people like Seattle. So I was just sort of figuring out what I could through books and magazines and stuff. I ended up doing that full time, ended up marrying Ted's daughter. That was not part of my plan. So we started a business and we were doing photography and did that for several years. And then Greg and I were just we would do creative projects all the time. The Risers was some of those. I think I shot some stuff for like products that he was making, and we were just always doing things. And so VSCO started as an idea that I think he had, like, well, what if you make some Photoshop actions and I make some WordPress templates, and we could kind of bundle that up and sell it and then give all the proceeds to charity, but it would sort of promote both of our businesses. And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. But he had a friend who he had met through doing Jimmy Eat World's website, Joel Flory, and they were also talking about things. And that sort of turned into some workshops and all these like big photographers that I knew of, but I never met. And suddenly I'm kind of working with these people, and we ended up making these Lightroom presets called VSCO Film. And it kind of fell to me to do that because I was the resident like technical guy who makes things. That was just sort of what I was. And I didn't really know what other photographers did. And I knew I kind of had learned a certain way of doing creative work through Aaron and J.R. McNeely, through Tooth and Nail, which was, very methodical, very, to the full extent, really. Yeah, systematic, but then also just quality. Like you do it and you make it good, and you just keep doing it and you polish it and you make it really good. And so that was just normal to me. And in my like portrait and wedding business and stuff, I now know I was doing way more editing work than was normal, but I didn't know that. I was just kind of applying the same kind of tactics that I had from there, like from mixing a record to, finishing photos. And so I discovered quickly that I was extremely intense and deep into the editing side of things. And that was not normal. Most people were not, they didn't like the editing side of photography. And so I made these Lightroom presets, and they went really huge, really quickly. And so then I think it was like the tax people were saying, you need to spend this money on something or else you're just going to give it all away in taxes.
Right.
They're like, well, let's make an app. That's kind of a thing. I think it was like the iPhone 4S at that point.
Yeah.
And so we hired a contractor, and it again fell to me to make presets for an app. And I had never worked on an app before. And he's like sending me these like documents to look through, and I kind of like pieced it all together and was able to make those first 10 presets in the app, which sounds like you liked, a lot of people liked. And it just kind of kept going from there. And it's been 13 years now, and I've done like so many different roles at this company. I'm always been the one making the presets, but like I've been on the product team, I've been on the engineering team, I'm in the marketing team right now. I've been kind of embedded in the design team, but I wasn't really a designer. Like I don't exactly fit anywhere, but I'm like kind of at the center of everything too.
Okay, but I love this because it also speaks to what you were talking about, like starting with Aaron and it Tooth and Nail. And I think there's like, story. I think there's something to be said about the spirit of like being the guy that's just like willing to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like I so resonate with that ethos, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like I don't fully know. I have an idea. I think I might know. And so I'm just going to try it. And it's like, oh, okay, you need help with this. And then just being able to fit wherever
it all together.
You're needed. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's so cool.
it's a little bit of fake it till you make it, but like
For
very
sure.
much like
Yeah.
fake it as good as you can and figure it out quick.
Yeah.
Fake it well. Right.
Yeah. So I think I figured
Nice,
that out.
man.
No, I get it. I get it. I love it.
And I'm a middle-aged man now, working at VSCO for a long time, and this stuff is all ancient history for me now.
Right.
But I still do music.
You've had a
little
pretty
bit.
cool career, I guess. Like,
yeah.
It's been really.
No big deal.
I feel very fortunate. I've been lucky with the timing a few times with Tooth and Nail, and then VSCO. I mean, we hit just kind of that wave of phones and photography and apps and stuff. And I mean, if we were trying to start an app like that now, it'd be so hard because you're up against so much. Whereas at that time, we were really fortunate with the timing. And again, that was just kind of a thing where like I was not the leader. I was not the like one saying, "Hey, we should do this." I was just along. I was part of it, helping. So yeah, I've been very fortunate and just kind of been able to carve out a good sort of creative role for myself. Where like, there's no Zach Hodges preset, and I don't need there to be one. But
Right.
I love making them, and I love working with people to make them. And it feels very much like producing, where we're like, okay, what are we going to make?
Yeah.
Let's make a mood board. Let's kind of do some pre-production. Let's put some stuff on the wall and then start messing with it. And you kind of get to piece by piece a finished product, just like how you get to a mixed and mastered record. And it feels like
Zach, you're a mind reader. Because I was going to ask that exact question. Like, what are the similarities between working with Tooth and Nail and your VSCO experience? So you're already answering the question that I hadn't even asked.
Oh, good. Well,
Excellent
photography
job.
and music have so many overlaps. So even like I was very, very technical. I was getting into like, summing and the bit depth and the like sample rate and Nyquist frequencies and like all these things. I'm totally like an engineer scientist brain. And when I started getting into photography, I realized like so much of these even the same words,
Right.
like there's 24-bit audio, there's 14-bit raw files, and it kind of means the same thing.
Yeah.
Saturation, I'm sure.
And compression and even like the ways that we have all these like amazing digital things, but then we really want them to look and sound old.
And feel right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I had already spent a lot of time with like tape saturators and vintage compressors and literal tape machines, that I knew how to operate and stuff. That was part of my job. And so I was kind of comfortable with like doing that. And so then shooting some films and trying to mess with Lightroom and bend all the set. And it felt very much like mixing, like the drums is like the contrast curve, and then you kind of start building from there.
This is cool.
And it's the same thing. Yeah. So I feel like it feels in my brain like the same as mixing a record
100%,
when I'm making a preset. It's such a similar thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would be able to do it if I hadn't gone through that experience. I don't know.
Right.
They overlap a ton.
That's so.
And the people skills
awesome.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
true.
I feel like photography, I learned a lot of that. Like I did a bunch of weddings. I did 125 weddings. And like my ability to deal with people and conflict and stressful situations vastly improved.
Oh yeah.
Weddings really puts you through it. And then just life and marriage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, probably better that you honestly started in a basement studio with a bunch of young dudes trying to figure things out, rather than on a bride's wedding day, learning those conflict skills.
Yeah.
Suddenly,
like if you're gonna get
the band dynamics aren't as intense.
We could record again. We can't do that day.
You can't wedding again.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so we've been going for a while. So I think if Josh and TJ, do y'all have any final questions? Because I have one that I think I would like to finish on.
Sure.
But is there anything else we want to cover really quickly? Josh, I know Josh could do this for like 4 more days.
I literally could just go through your catalog and be like, "Oh, tell me about this." But yeah, we've gone a long time already. It's been very fascinating.
This has been fun. I love it.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I haven't talked to anybody about some of these things in 20 years. Like,
Right.
Maybe Greg and I might reminisce a little bit, but like, I haven't found anybody that wants to hear about these things in forever.
Well,
So yeah,
buddy,
it's fun.
welcome to Church Hymns
found
Now.
the podcast.
Yep,
I found you.
That's why we found you.
You found me, actually.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think I would like to end on, or like the last major question I would like to ask is, now being so removed from the time you spent at Tooth and Nail and all those records that you worked on, which record, for better or for worse, looms the largest in your mind? Like whether it's the I didn't know how to make a metal record, so Becoming the Archetype was crazy, or the trying to figure out how to mic turntables for Falling Up, or or Terminal, or what have you. Now, if you're meeting someone at a party, at a church mixer, and they bring up the fact like, oh man, I used to love Tooth and Nail. Like what's the record that you want to instantly start talking about?
I think I'm the happiest still with my work with Telecast. And it was so much more like you talk about how, the band comes in and then they leave and I never really see them again. Like Josh and also Luke. I mean, Luke was the best man in my wedding. Luke Stiller, who was the bass player for Telecast for quite a while. Nice. I was up in Portland, I think just last year, and saw Josh, and we hung out a lot. So he's like one of the only people that really like my life connected to that record and then the following records. And that was closest to the music that I liked to listen to. I wasn't listening to metal and any, like a lot of the kind of Tooth and Nail stuff.
Right.
Although I came to really appreciate it, and I still do. It's funny how your own tastes can change just by kind of what you're surrounded by. And also I would say like the Telecast, like Beauty of Simplicity, I was playing that piano and that was like the first time I heard myself on the radio. That was a really cool moment.
That's cool.
And then they, Josh was always wanting me to come on the road with them and like be a part of the band. And so I got to tour with them, not really tour, but there'd be like certain shows where I got to go. And ultimately, like he took a worship leader job in Southern California down here, and he started flying me down to help with like, hey, I'm going to do this big Easter service and we're going to have a string section. I need somebody to write parts for that or whatever. And I would come down and do that. And so that's ultimately how I met Ted, how I ended up down here, how I ended up marrying his daughter, and my whole life down here basically.
Wow.
Really
cool.
Started with Telecast, and I still love all those records. So I think that's the one that looms the largest. And also, was it Quiet Revolution? That was the first Telecast record that I did myself. I was not in a great place. It was like I was not happy. I was not good. But it still came out really good, and I don't know. There's like a feeling for me with that record. Whereas like the next one, like I was in a much better place, and like the whole thing's just like a little bit more buttoned up, which I actually don't love as much now.
Yeah. But I love, I often talk about on this show too, and how I feel about my own music. Like now that I've been removed from so much of like the feeling and the headspace I was at, is like, an album is a time machine, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, even if it's not perfect, it's like, okay, this is where I was at this time. Right. And I appreciate that. So,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's great.
I love that. Zach, is there anything else you want to tell the jammers, as we so lovingly call our listeners?
Oh man,
is there anything? Do you want people to find you online? Is there anything you want people to look up?
I mean, you can. It's all photography, VSCO stuff, and even like a lot of my social media presence is. I mean, it's really me, but it's very much like me as a VSCO evangelist.
Right.
That's sort of my job. So like I didn't even have Instagram before kind of bringing it back to life for that. So I'm not like, I mean, I'll post about this, but like it's generally like me as a photographer, as a VSCO person online.
Yeah.
But you guys found me on my website, zachhodges.com. Obviously, I'm happy to talk about this stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It was just such a, I don't know. I feel very fortunate to have been a part of that. I'm so grateful to Aaron and JR and Brandon, all these people that believed in me, gave me a chance, let me in. And Tyson Paoletti, lived at their house for a few months, and just wonderful people. In hindsight, especially as now somebody with a young guy who's going to be 19, 20 doing all these things, like I'm just so grateful for the people in the industry and at Tooth and Nail that really were really good. It was not a perfect place, but
Right.
I have a lot to be grateful for. And I see that now more than ever. And the fact that like there was some cool music that people really connected with enough to want to talk about it with me 20 years later. Like that is huge. I'm so grateful to be a part of that. So,
well, we're grateful for you and your contributions.
Good.
Yeah.
And I do hope to pick up music
100%.
again. Like I haven't really been able to make records in a long time. I kind of like finally got to this point maybe a few years ago where I just realized like I keep trying to like put a few hours together here or there at the end of the day to try to make something and finish something, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
Like you need
a
lot of time, big chunks of time to make a record, and it's not the life that I have right now. And you've heard my story. I chose this.
Yeah.
I wanted this.
Yeah.
So I hope to get back to making music some point in the future.
I get it. My last record came out, Josh, 2017?
Yep.
And I've been promising a new one every year since.
There was a line in, oh my gosh, who's the second guitar player? Not Johnny Greenwood, the other guy, Ed Sheeran.
Johnny Greenwood.
I can't. This is so bad. I can't think of his name.
We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post. The guitar player here. Hold on. I'll give you the right soundbite. Ed O'Brien.
Ed O'Brien. There it is.
So Ed O'Brien came out with a solo record, and I remember reading on like Apple Music. There's always like a write up, and he said something about how basically like you kind of go through a season with kids where like your creative output is just not really much, and it comes back and you can do it again. And I remember like honestly like starting to tear up reading that, because I was just in the throes of who am I? What has my life become? Where and it was just so encouraging to hear like, oh, this is a season. That's okay.
Yeah,
and it's not permanent, and I can still I'm not like permanently turned off from these things. This can still be a part of who I am. So I'm looking forward to that, but very much enjoying this time too.
I love that.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Well. Yeah. So TJ, how old is your daughter now?
She'll be 7 months and 4 days.
He's just getting started.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Congrats.
That's right.
All right.
So it's cool to hear that, Zach. I love that.
Yeah. I know you needed that, TJ.
Sure did.
Okay. For our listeners, if you enjoyed this, we have more nonsense like it at our Patreon at patreon.com/Church Jams Now podcast. And of course, from all of us here at the Church Jams Now crew, may all your favorite bands stay together, and peace out, Monfreres.